She was just a stranger, until he made her the center of his fantasy. He had not meant to idealize her, to put her on a pedestal to overwhelm Radiant. She drew people in, shook their hands, pulled up chairs for them. "Are you the organizer?" she had been asked. No, she was not just a woman with a smile, a woman in a sundress who scooted over and made room for others. What was her name again? And then she directed her smile at him, her warmth, her questions. Mathieu stirred in his seat, gripped tight the neck of his bottle so as not to tremble. He did that sometimes. Or rather, the nerves did, as though they were an entity of their own. "What does your tattoo mean?" she asked, leaning in both hands on the edge of her seat as though to anchor. Her curiosity, juvenile energy, something young and endearing about her gap-toothed smile. "I drew it," said Mathieu, a ghost, an illustration he had scribbled in his notebook the day his dad ignored his new shoes. Leather he had traded in his scruffy. Vans and their worn tongues because real men, not boys, wore real shoes? "Really?" said the woman wide-eyed. "What does it mean?" Cliché question, but it was she who had asked it. "I think I felt invisible," he said. "What does that feel like, right? How would she know? And how would he know that she was more than a bubbly personality? A pretty face, a question mark. Do you listen to everything others say, or do you stare through them? Do you see what is not there? Cafe, worn leather seats, pamphlets scattered. Across the windowsill, Mathieu stuttered, hands jittery as he spoke, responded. Had she noticed, her eyes fell upon his trembling fingers, his body quivering like the crown of a tree voice, rustling as light as leaves. "So what brings you to Lille Hay?" asked silence fill the silence he felt too visible beneath her gaze, fiddling with a sugar sachet. He watched as her lips moved in response. How a smile flittered here, there disappeared. How her eyes crinkled. Brown-green hazel freckles sprinkled. Across her sunburnt cheeks, dead skin on her nose, peeling like dry glue nasal hair, untrimmed upper lip in need of a wax, though plump and pink and soft. He bet she was far from perfect. She was an ordinary individual with ordinary flaws and ordinary ideas, mediocre even. He would not idealize her, not this time. Not again. She would do just like this, just as she was, and had he not grown aware of his own patterns, he was. "What about you?" she asked. "What about me?" "Pourquoi es-tu venu à Lille, sweet?" Accent hers, her voice changed in French regressed. Rather the voice of a girl always curious, always inquiring deuce, and he might just burst with nervous laughter, might just grab her hand, kiss her feet happy. He was merely to be in her orbit, happy. He was to sit across from her in an orange summer dress, doe-eyed as pretty as a present with ribbon tied. But he was no longer one to idealize, remember, and happy. It was the right word. Ordinary, just like him and just like her. At least that is what, he told himself. "But you do not know me," said Nora he'd propped up on a pillow. "I know," said Mathieu. "I have been reminding myself that you are just another individual too. And that you are flawed, that I would have to accept that version of you. It sounds like you have been thinking a lot about me. I have idealizing me, really. I am trying not to. Hence why I have been thinking about your flaws, but that is also obsessive. I do not want to be anybody's limerent object. It is reductive, dehumanizing. Even, nobody ever sees me. They project their fantasies, their desire onto me. And that guy from the language exchange, for example, Laurent, he has already grabbed my waist multiple times. Even though I flinched and pulled away, I cannot just be ever. It seems, well, now you are making me feel guilty for being attracted to you. We can go back to being friends if it makes you feel better. But I am not sure I would be able to, maybe, said Nora, dragging herself out of bed. "Coffee high, Mathieu. I think we got carried away last night, and I am feeling a little uncomfortable. Is it okay if we go back to being platonic? If so, are we still on for the fireworks? I would bring my friend along, send pages and pages of text." Nora scrolled indefinitely. Disproportionate it was. "You cannot tell me how to feel. My feelings are mine and I care about you." Now you initiated intimacy. Do not tell me not to get attached. I do not resent you, but page after page, like kissing him was a contract. You are afraid of intimacy, but deep down, I think you are open to a romantic connection. It is just that you have been hurt before. You are closed off, sure, but you are just scared. Page after page, like kissing him, was a sentence he had made her tea and microwaved. Leftovers kissed her while she was drunk, and now she was emotionally responsible for this near stranger 3 times. They had met first, the language exchange, then coffee finally at a bar after a bad date. And now he expected love as though it were an exchange, a currency, a food stamp starving. He was, and he devoured the thought of her, licked the bones, clean. Mathieu. She wrote, I am feeling overwhelmed. You have crossed several of my boundaries, and now you are psychoanalyzing me whom you do not know. Maybe I am afraid of intimacy. Sure, but not with you. I simply do not want to be with you, and that is okay. Nora flinched at his response. You should be more considerate about the feelings of those you decide to initiate intimacy with. Hi, Mathieu. We do not know each other well enough to be having this kind of conversation or this level of emotional intensity. It is inappropriate and unfair. I will not have it blocked her. He did unblocked new message. Sure, I should not have sent you all that at once. But I stand by what I said, and it is none of my business what you are like with other men regardless of my opinion. And I was dishonest about my emotions yesterday because I felt used, and rightfully so. Just send me your bank details so I can pay you back for the beers you insisted on buying me despite me expressing my discomfort. But I wish you the best here in Lille. We do not own the rights to how we are perceived or imagined by others, but that does not mean it is not violating. What had he done with the thought of her, and why could she feel it? Why was it palpable? Why could she smell it hanging in the air like spoiled milk? Why could she taste it in every forkful of instant noodles? She pushed her bowl aside, fork cluttering against the porcelain. She had lost her appetite, dry, gagged. Everything tasted, sounded, smelled of him taking liberties with the idea of her pulling her apart and reassembling her like a Mrs. Potato Head, all the while unaware that he was doing it, that he had reduced her to a plaything and stuck ears where they did not belong, chose his favorite set of eyes, removed the mouth who needs one anyway. When you are a blank face projected onto arbitrary, you are rendered, but you have just enough of an identity of individuality to serve as the screen to personify all their desires and projections, and for them to think it is not their imagination, but you nightmares sometimes linger their fingerprints loud and luminescent. On the waking world, Nora lay in bed, heart pounding in her chest. He had followed her. He had wide-awake bad dream, and now she rose afraid she would find him outside her apartment door or in her stairwell. Fastened the chain lock, she did shut the curtains 3 stories high, turned on the kitchen light above the stove to dispel the darkness. Should it morph into a man who had lived God knows what with the fantasy of her? A man who resented her autonomy, her boundaries, her refusal to assume the role he had cast her in. But what if he was outside somewhere? What if he saw her light come on, nausea and goosebumps evoked by a near stranger? A near stranger who had conjured up a narrative centered around her and him, a narrative which he seemed to believe, despite its non-reciprocity limerence, it was not flattering but degrading, reductive, dehumanizing. He had poured into her all his expectations as though she were a container, a heart-shaped cake pan. Mathieu pulled at the doorknob, but it caught in its frame, locked if he could just speak to her in person. Cold. It was wind climbing up his spine and caressing his neck. He sat on the curb, shoulders hunched, watched a group of drunken girls trip over themselves, squeal their heels, clinking like ghost stones. One stumbled across the road and past him, jangling keys, metal scratching against the keyhole, creaking door. His dirty shoe. A door jamb just in time. Then he followed her in and sat in the stairwell outside, Nora's door rehearsed. His lines in his head, then a loud knock, knock, if he could just speak to her in person, knock, 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 knock.